Hi there and welcome back to Japan and to my reaction to Pizzicato 5's It's a Beautiful Day. Now interestingly enough, this is the first video where we've taken a slightly different format, so follow me with this. I've actually already heard the song. If you want to see my reaction to it, click the link in the description below. For legal reasons, we're not allowed to put the reactions on YouTube anymore, but you can watch the whole thing as a video. Just open that link in the description below, and you've also got the link to the original song there as well, so you'll be able to follow my reaction. But what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to jump straight ahead to the review. So, first of all, check it out. Pause this video, check out the reaction first. Have you checked out the reaction? Have you checked out the reaction? Are you good? Is everything okay? Alright, let's get back into talking about the song. So I've just heard it, as you can tell by the fact that my beard is still the same as it was in the reaction video. There's been no passage of time. And yeah, in a lot of ways, I really like this song. Now, I was a bit apprehensive going into it about what exactly I was getting into here, because as I said in the reaction, I'd seen the thumbnail to this previously. I'd seen that the video looked like kind of a 60s style thing, had a kind of a swingy vibe to it. I saw the thumbnail where you got the dancers standing up on the podiums and the band in front and the sort of black and white 4:3 ratio screen. And so I didn't know, is this actually genuinely old, or I kind of got the feeling from the way people were touting this that this was something a little bit more modern that was being done in old style. And it does play on a lot of those things. This is actually a really interesting one for me for many reasons. I think that it mixes many retro themes. And I think it does that by building on various things on top of others. Let me just explain. Because obviously this is going for that sort of 60s style, a little bit rock and roll, but with a little bit of a French tinge to it, a slightly jazzy French style to it as well. There is a name for that style, but I've forgotten what it is. It's got a little bit of that, a mixture of some of those things, and yet it's channeling them through the fact that a lot of Japanese pop culture, certainly in the late 90s, was very much itself referential of 60s Western pop music. French as well. So as a result, I kind of had this funny feeling where I was like, is this taking its cues from 60s Western music or from 90s Japanese music? Obviously you're supposed to think 60s Western music, and yet it didn't feel like that. It kind of felt like it was harking back to the days of, well, I mean, as a reference I often use, Puffy. So Puffy, who had a phase of doing that as well towards the beginning of their career. So this was something where I wasn't really 100% sure that I was swept in a particular atmospheric direction. I kind of more got this whole range of different references and things came to my mind. What did I think of the song overall, though? As I mentioned during the reaction, I didn't think that it necessarily had a particular hook. There was not a chorus so much as a change in the key. It went through different sections. Each one had its own sort of flow, had its own slight catchiness to it, and yet it was the change in key. You went up from one bit which was being played in, if you like, a very resting key, and then what I think was supposed to be the hook was in a slightly raised key, and it sounded a little bit more, had a slightly more doubtful, questioning feel to it. Everything was a little bit more pressured, and then it goes back down to that resting key, what you call the tonic or the key of the song overall. It went back to that, and that was the point where everything feels calm again, which I think was really the verse, depending on how the writer wanted that to come across. Nonetheless, it wasn't sort of designed to have your traditional sort of rock and roll formed sound. It was designed to sound a little bit more like it was just sort of flowing from start to end, and in that sense it worked. I think that on the real beneficial side to this was the fact that the production was nicely done. Again, this reminded me a little bit of a lot of the sort of late 90s music, which was referential of 60s music, in that it was built on this core of slightly light and wispy sort of melodies and slightly distorted sounds to make them sound like they were recorded in a slightly old school analog manner. And yet overall it was put together with a lot of sheen. You had the little synths, the little productions, the little there was a strange little synth thing going whoop, like a sort of almost theremin sound that was thrown in there, but you know, a sort of a clearly a digitized one. And there's all these little synthetic things, the way that it reminded me a lot of the sort of Apollo 440 or the a JXL remix of Elvis, A Little Less Conversation, when you had the drum roll coming in, every single drum fill, of which there were a good 3 or 4, all of them were done completely solo and with a lot of distortion on the drums. I was like, that is very reminiscent of that sort of late 90s updating the 60s sounds thing. It had that very much that aura. It's very difficult to explain if you don't know what I'm talking about, and yet I could really feel a lot of the production cues were coming from that late 90s era. And so, you know, in a lot of ways, this it took a lot of good cues, and I liked things. I liked things like that. I liked the way that the backing vocals were used very heavily with a little bit of a sort of tongue-in-cheek fun element to they were sort of being overly done. I liked the way that the melody was slightly overly cheesed up, given a slightly overly sway, sentimental vibe. I liked the way that the guitar was bouncing along and everything was thick. You had room for the guitar in one side, a little bit of a sort of a electric organ coming in there as well. The drums were nicely produced. As I pointed out, there was a lot of work done on the snare drum. When we went into the bridge section, there was a whole flanger effect where the snare drum went off on its own crazy cosmic mind-blowing madness. The whole song had a real sense that it was being done in a playful manner. Now, as always, we're honest on this channel, or at least the channel we had before. This is a new channel, but I'm still it's still the same channel. I have to be honest about some things that I didn't like so much about it. One of the things that didn't work for me is I felt that because there wasn't anything as much that was it kind of flowed throughout, but none of the sections were recognizably catchy enough or rewarding enough to be, if you like, the bit that you were looking forward to in the song. And the net result of that was that it felt a little bit like it kind of trailed on, and there was a sense that I kind of felt like we were waiting for something to happen. Like I say, the resting chord, the key of the overall song, whenever it comes back to that, that's just kind of the riff, the beginning of the verse. It in itself is not a particularly wow moment. So it never really feels like any moment of this is the relief, the crescendo. I'm not saying that every song has to have a crescendo. It just feels like this one does kind of trail on, that it starts to feel after a while like it doesn't have a direction that it's going in. Like the idea is you're just supposed to be enjoying what it's already doing enough. And I can't really say that what it was doing was in itself enough. Like I say, I liked the feel. I liked a lot of the ideas. I liked the playfulness. I liked the way it was delivered. The singer's voice was really cool. The whole arrangement was really nice. It just didn't have a moment where it totally clicked. It's like I got what they were doing and it was working and I liked it. It just at no point was it that moment where you go, oh yeah, that's the moment I have to come back for. That's the moment that's going to get stuck in my head. If anything, the little key change where it goes up to what I suspect is the hook, after a while started to become a little bit irritating, the way the song was going. Sort of key, and just it's like, okay, just kind of bouncing back and forwards between these two keys. That's the problem, is it never really got to that moment where it felt 100% like it was rewarding you so much as just, hey, if you like this thing just swinging along in the background, that's cool. And I guess in a way that could be seen as a very 60s attitude towards writing music. Not all 60s music, but hey, there you go. So yeah, if I was being honest, is this a song I would regularly come back to? Probably not. I mean, this is a song that I would reference to other people. I would recommend it to other people as an interesting way to hear like a combination of some really cool things, a little bit of a harking back to both 60s music, but also to that 90s phase of toying with 60s sounds again, that sort of like retroistic 60s revival in the 90s. There's a lot of things that I would recommend this to people to listen to for as an interesting piece of music. I don't think I would really come back to it that much though, because although I liked it, like I say, by the end it had started to get a little bit irritating, and I think that is solely because of the fact that it went up and sort of down and up and down and up through its key, and then down in this key, and then up in its key, and it never really felt like you were getting a payoff for this constant up and down in the key. Which is a shame, because key changes can be really well used, and often are in Japanese music, ironically. The whole idea of switching up the key for the chorus is a very common, well, it's becoming less common now, but very much a trope of Japanese sort of pop music writing. So I just felt like it wasn't really used, particularly here, and there was no payoff. However, all of the individual things work. There's a lot of really interesting moments. There's a really fun feel to it. And like I say, everything is well constructed from a production side. It's well written for each little bit. I just think overall the bigger picture is what was lacking. If you were to take any 2 minutes of this song and isolate them and say, hey, do you want to hear the rest? I'd be like, yes, I do. And then you give me the whole song and I'm like, it never went anywhere. And never paid off on what I felt like all of those key changes and all that building up of mood was going to be. So I have a fairly mixed feeling towards this one. I really like it. I do think it wasn't it's not one that I'm going to come rushing back to, though. It is certainly one, though, that I'll keep in mind for recommending to people when we're having conversations about music writing, music style, and music production as well. I'd be very interested to hear more by this group, though, because like I say, it was playful, and to me, that's always a good sign. If it's a group who are playful with what they're doing, who are not overly restricted in how they write, that means that, you can often get a lot of great things. I mean, I'm not doing a direct comparison, but just to give a slightly hyperbolic example here, you look at some of the really great bands who pushed forward music writing, and we're talking about bands like the Beatles, Queen. These are the sorts of groups who they have like trails of fantastic songs, but because of the fact that they were pushing into areas where maybe other people weren't doing things before, they also have a lot of really bad songs. And I think any group who pushes boundaries tends to have a mixed result, and there's nothing wrong with that. So when I hear this, it sounds like a band who are fun, who are playful, who are interesting, who've probably got a lot of talent, and this feels like maybe there was a lot of potential there, but it just came across as a bit of a misfire in the final conclusion, in my opinion. So give me more Pizzicato 5 recommendations if they're not already in our Reddit. And hey, if you've been following us for a while, you know how to suggest songs. Go to our Reddit, as it is linked in the description below. If you want to talk to us more about music, there's the comments down here. Just leave your thoughts, whether you like the song or not, whether you agree with me or not. Just get in there and tell us what you think. Like and subscribe is massively appreciated. If you want to get more involved in the discussion, again, our Reddit, but also our Discord. We're talking about music all the time with all of our community on Discord. So it's a really great place to get involved in the discussion. And until I see you hopefully soon on my next video, for now, thank you so much for tuning in and seeing the first of this new format experiment. Please let me know as well what you think about this format for the videos. Hopefully it worked for you. Like I say, I am apologizing for the fact that we are restricted on what we can do with videos now. I want to get the content out to you. That's the most important thing. But for now, from Japan, thank you so much for tuning in. Until I see you soon, ciao, ciao.